When I was writing this book, I had 3 or 4 groups of people in mind. In the first place, the people who are going out to pastor our churches, or lead youth groups, or lead in Bible studies, they need to have a biblical theology of worship. So that when I was writing this book, I had them in mind. I know that those kinds of readers want more than just surface and superficial discussion about the individual topics. They also want me to explain why I give the conclusions I do, and especially in a book like this, what biblical evidence is there for the point I am making? That's very important for people preparing for the ministry. But of course, I don't want only people preparing for the ministry to read this book. I want people who are already engaged in the ministry to read it. Because, at least when I was in seminary, and I've taught in the seminary for many years, there isn't a single book out there that does what I do in this book, and they couldn't have had these kinds of conversations. Now we have a resource for people who have had courses in worship, but those courses have usually focused on other elements. A third group of readers for this book is ordinary Christians. In the end, Christians, the people who attend worship, should have a biblical theology of worship. So that when they see their leaders up front, if it is true and biblical what they are doing, they can affirm it enthusiastically. On the other hand, when they see those who are leading them in worship, leading them into practices or declaring theological ideas about worship that are not in keeping with the Scriptures, I think it's up to the people in the congregations to remind the pastors that there is a better, more biblical way. Now, I deliberately targeted ordinary Christians in the way the book is structured. In this book, there are 13 chapters. We did that very deliberately so that Bible study groups can read this book in 1 quarter of the year, and each week we can read it, come together and discuss it, and next week we'll read another chapter, and in 1 quarter, in 3 months, we can make our way through the whole book. The other side of that is, with that kind of structure, it also makes it very useful as a textbook for colleges, undergraduate students, because most college semesters are 10 to 14 or 15 weeks. Well, here you've got your outline for the course, and we could simply assign each week that the students in the class would be reading a chapter a week, and then we can discuss this in class. I hope that this book reaches a wide audience, because, at least in the world in which I live, there is a tragic, pathetic view of worship. And very few people are asking what makes worship biblical. They're simply asking, well, how can we design worship so that the church fills? We want a full building, and that's the sign of a successful pastor. No, it's not. I lived with Ezekiel for 15 years, and people would flock to him to hear him. But they came deliberately to be entertained. Nobody cared at all about what God was actually saying. We can fall into the same trap. We can fall into the trap that true worship happens when lots of people come. Well, actually, that may be the opposite. Well, it's not that we want to discourage people from coming, But when they come, we want to know what worship is, who may worship, and who is the God who accepts our worship.